Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. And on today's Doctor Who video, we're going to talk about the Doctor Who spin-off, Class. In my Doctor Who Revival rewatch, I reached the point where I needed to rewatch and binge Class, so I binged the whole series yesterday. Class is written by author Patrick Ness, co-created and mostly written. The better episodes are written by Patrick. Let me just say the first thing about Class. It's well made, it has this really cinematic vibe to it. The music, the VFX is top of the range. It's a sensationally put together show. There's no question about that. The storytelling by Patrick Ness is also very, very strong. The problem is where Class falls down is its characterizations, because mostly I just don't care about these characters. I don't care about April and Ram's relationship. In fact, I'm going to say those two never worked as a couple, and that became a huge problem within the series. Now, look, I think we all know, anyone who watched Class knows the best character was Quill, played by Catherine Kelly. Now, what's actually kind of ironic here is this was supposed to be a teenage show to attract a younger audience to Doctor Who and this spin-off, and hopefully get them interested in Doctor Who in the future as well. And now Catherine Kelly at the time must have been approaching her late 20s, her early 30s, so it's ironic that she was everyone's favourite thing about Class. Was that the way they wanted it to go? Or was it just... I think that Quill was just an afterthought character. If you actually see the amount of screen time she has in each episode, it's not a lot until we get to episode 7, which is literally her episode. And guess what? Surprise, surprise, no shit Sherlock. Episode 7 is the best episode because you've got the best character and the best actor on the show, totally having all the screen time from one episode. And that was always my favourite episode. But the characterizations are very, very problematic in this show. That's what killed this show. That's why we never got a season 2, and we never will. You watch this show and you think it looks amazing. If you're just interested in the aesthetics of a story or a film, and you just care about seeing great VFX, you'd say, why the fuck didn't they make more of this? This looked so good. But the characterizations really let it down. Now let's look at April. Again, the actor did, I think her first name was Sophie, did a tremendous job in the role, but the character has many, many issues. Basically, April is your Gwen Cooper, is your Rose Tyler. She's your real everyday young woman into this story. Unfortunately, the progressive red flags are there pretty quickly. Now, I forget that who the aliens are that we see in the first episode that literally is sharing a heart with April. So there's this big story. So basically, this is Teen Torchwood. So this is another problem with Class. It's just a rip-off of Torchwood. It's literally Torchwood at Coe Hill, but nobody really is an expert on aliens at this school. You know, although there's been alien incursions before, we know that from season 8 of Doctor Who and The Caretaker with Peter Capaldi and Jenna Coleman, but no one there really knows what they're doing. Now, you've got Quill, and you've got the Charlie character, who the Doctor says from their own planet, they're the last of their kind, but they're actually enemies. They're from opposite factions, and Quill is Charlie's basically slave, if you like. She's his prisoner for all the crimes she was supposed to have committed. And she can't kill him or anything because there's a little thing in her head stopping her from doing it. So that is probably the most interesting character dynamics in the whole series, which is Quill and Charlie. Those two are great. They have great chemistry. Everything that Patrick Ness was trying to do really worked with them. But the Ram and April relationship doesn't work. Because from day one, when you see Charlie and April interacting, you think, yeah, these two have got chemistry, man. If there is going to be a romance, it's going to be about them. The progressives kicked in again because Charlie had to be gay and start dating a Polish lad. And basically April obviously had to date Ram. Well, didn't have to, but that's how it worked out. Now let's look at Ram. Ram had a girlfriend in the first episode. He saw her murdered in front of him. Her blood all over his face. Now they did well initially with having him shaken up by this, but I think it was only an episode or two later where he's shagging April. He's literally shagging April, and him and April are now a thing, and the other girlfriend is soon forgotten about. In fact, if I remember rightly, it's the episode when the dead people come back and it's the aliens controlling them. He sees his deceased girlfriend, he runs away from her, finds April, and about 10 minutes later I think they're making love. If it is in that episode or the episode afterwards. And also in this show has one of these annoying things where people don't really are not affected by death for very, very long. It's got that mentality to it, which I don't like. But yeah, the problem with this show is the characterization. There's a lot of progressive red flags here. There's a lot of cringy kind of lines here coming from the pen and the mouth of a progressive writer. And that's also a problem. So they want to make April this strong, Xena, warrior princess. So basically she's sharing a heart with these aliens. She goes to their world. She has swords for hands, or she suddenly seems to have, swords in her hands. It's all part of the premise. It's an interesting story. And at times it's very well executed. But ultimately, it's a cheat sheet to make her a warrior. She can suddenly fight because they're sharing memories. She defeats the warrior king or whatever he's called. And she, for a short time, becomes the king of this planet and is able, I think they're called the shadow people or whatever they're called, she's able to command those armies. But it's all to do with empowering her as a female. It's very transparently done. Now, of course, what is the number one red flag for a progressive writer, for a progressive story? Bad dad, bad man. Well, don't worry, everyone, because April has a very, very bad dad. He clearly had some kind of social anxiety disorder, suffering from depression. He got in a car with his daughter April when she was very young, and his wife, and he tried to kill them all. He tried to commit suicide and kill them at the same time. Obviously, a terrible thing to do, and I would never justify that or make excuses. But here's the thing. So obviously, he comes out of prison. He went to prison for this, didn't he? Shouldn't he have gone in some kind of mental institution? But no. According to Patrick Ness, you go straight to jail for doing something like this. I would imagine he'd at least go to a psych prison. But anyway, I don't know how the world works exactly, but I don't think this man would just be chucked in a prison cell because clearly he wasn't in the right place mentally to do what he did. But the script in the show decides that this is a very bad man who should never be forgiven. Now, his wife becomes disabled because of his actions. So there are huge consequences to his actions, and that's very important to understand. So I understand that the daughter and the wife would not be forgiving him anytime soon. And in terms of human nature, you understand that. I just don't like the way the show tries to treat him like some bad person and a criminal. It's clear when you look at the performance of the actor, this man has suffered with depression and anxiety, and there's no compassion about what drove this man to do this, because the progressive writer, Patrick Ness, would have seen that as making an excuse for a man. But this is not how it works. The man was clearly mentally ill. That's why he did what he did. Now, here's the problem. They clearly didn't think deeply about this, because if they did, they would have found another reason to make, a bad dad, man bad, if they thought about it. But they didn't think about it very deeply, especially with mental illness being such a big talking point in the world we live in today. I was very surprised how clumsy they were trying to make this man a bad man. Ultimately, April's a little bit more, I suppose, sympathetic towards him, but she says, I don't want to talk to you, I want you to go away. That's understandable. But ultimately, progressives like painting all fathers as bad men and all mothers as good. Their world, the progressives' world, is very black and white. Men are bad, women are good. Women can never be bad, and men normally are not that good, and only one thing on their minds. That's mostly by male feminists and male progressives in the industry, and there's a lot of transparency about this. So April's character falls apart really quickly, and we get this line in the opening episode about how she doesn't want to be nice because nice girls are not a good thing and blah blah blah. So we get to Tanya, which is basically the younger character who's involved in all of this as well. So basically, as I say, this is a teen Torchwood. So Tanya's got this basically she's got this problem in her head where she's obsessed about being the youngest. So I remember the penultimate episode, or no, not the penultimate, the one before the penultimate episode, when they're trapped in the classroom by Quill, and basically these meteors crash into the classroom, and basically they're outside of time and space. Each one of them holds the meteorite and it makes them be honest. So when we come to Tanya, she's like, everyone just sees me as their little sister. And, I'm fed up with being the youngest. And it's like the other characters are standing there saying really compelling things, or almostly compelling things, or more compelling things than, oh no, my biggest problem in life is that I'm young. And it's like, so fucking what? It's like a writer saying to the audience, I really don't know what to do with this character, and I've run out of fucking ideas. And I think literally he must have been banging his head on the desk while he was writing, and he thought, fuck it, I'm just going to come up with some pathetic idea. And so this is why Class didn't work. His characterizations didn't work. Ultimately, it had interesting concepts and some semi-good, fleshed out storytelling, but ultimately the journey his characters go on doesn't ring true. The only character that really comes out of this well, I would say just about Charlie, but Quill, played by Catherine Kelly, is the champion of this series. And as I say, it's ironic considering this is mostly about a group of teenagers, but it's Catherine Kelly's Quill that really comes out of this really, really well. So what I would say is, while I was re-binging this yesterday, when each episode was finishing, I was thinking, wow, this is really exciting and cinematic, but I was cringing at the dialogue for the teenagers. The problem is, with progressive writers, they think they're so cool and with it that they understand teenagers because, progressives want to put every one of us in a separate box and not look at us as individuals. So they see all teenagers the same. The problem is with the teenagers in Class, they don't seem like average teenagers. They come up with certain phrases that Patrick Ness feels teenagers say, and what their research tells them teenagers talk like. And in the end, it becomes an insult to the audience you're trying to attract. And, the characters are just not relatable because a lot of them are being force-fed. If Patrick Ness took it a little bit easier with April, she could have been a very interesting Gwen Cooper or Rose Tyler, but ultimately she became very, very annoying. I don't want a knight in shining armor. These are classic progressive kind of lines that you say, right? It's like when you say something and nobody's actually made that assumption in the first place and you're just saying it. So, yeah, I think their mistakes there. I think Charlie and April would have made a great little romantic story, but Patrick Ness went down another line, a more progressive line, and that's what got him into trouble. And clearly Patrick Ness, being an author and not really an experienced screenwriter, really hurt him here as well. Because when you're writing a book, you get a lot more pages and time to develop your characters. He didn't really get that here. Although for screen time and TV time, 8 episodes is more than enough. We've seen that kind of in a lot of kind of mini-series and dramas, if you're in that way nuanced to be able to do it. It's the characters that were the failure of Class. But the biggest failure of Class, and I said it from day one when I first saw it, Torchwood and the Sarah Jane Adventures used characters that the Doctor had a deep relationship with. Now, his relationship with Captain Jack was forged with a shorter amount of screen time. But Sarah Jane was an icon of Doctor Who. Of course, you're going to watch her show. Sarah Jane was the Doctor Who show back in the 80s. So you saw Matt Smith cameo in her series and David Tennant. But it just felt like a Doctor Who spin-off. And Torchwood, well, Captain Jack wouldn't have even been at Torchwood Cardiff if it wasn't for the Doctor. So everything was defined by the Doctor in that spin-off, but they got to tell their own stories as well. And obviously Russell T Davies, being part of that development, a very clever creative, knew exactly what he was doing, and that's why they worked. The characters in Class really had nothing to do with the Doctor apart from Charlie and Quill being picked up by the Doctor at the beginning and seeing a little bit of Capaldi time, which was great. But there wasn't a stronger Doctor Who connection in that show. It was a very throwaway connection, and that's another reason the show didn't work. And if that's the clumsy element of this show, is the characterizations. They rushed through it. They wanted to stereotype teenagers in a certain way, and it didn't work. And as I say, ultimately the success of the show was Catherine Kelly's Quill, and you'd like to see her again. I'd like to see her in a Doctor Who story again. We know Catherine Kelly has great quality, but what was truly missing from Class was Clara Oswald. Yeah, if Class was a Clara Oswald vehicle for a Doctor Who spin-off, this would have really worked. She'd already been a teacher at Coal Hill. Now, what's interesting about this, she's on the bereaved list because the Doctor notices her name, but he's obviously had his mind wiped of her, but he kind of recognises the name. I don't know how the school knows that she's dead because obviously she didn't die in their time, so I don't know what happens there or how that worked out. It's another Moffatism, really, isn't it? Where you just can't make any sense of it, or a Chibnallism. But I think if Jenna Coleman starred in this spin-off, and it was her spin-off, and maybe she was the head of Coal Hill School, and she was in charge of this team that was put together, this kind of teen Torchwood team, I think if you added her to that really good cast, you would have had a special show. And if it was Clara Oswald's show, Class would have worked. That's what Class needed. That's what any Doctor Who spin-off needed. A character leading that show with a strong connection to the Doctor. And that is one of many things the show lacked. This has been Movies TV Mad with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. Look, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, all right? Shush. Shut up, shut up, shut up. Anyway, I will see you again in the next video. Until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.